The bedside clock glowed to 17 a.m. A muffled murmur drifted from the hallway, a sound that snagged me from the edge of sleep. Curiosity, or perhaps a prickle of unease, nudged me out of bed. As I crept closer to the door, Sophia's voice, sharp and clear, sliced through the darkness. "Once the old bet kicks the bucket, this place is ours." My breath hitched. My own daughter-in-law, speaking of my death as if it were a mere inconvenience, a hurdle to clear before claiming her prize. My house. Marcus's reply was softer, hesitant. "Sophia, don't talk like that." "Why not? It's true, isn't it?" Sophia's voice was laced with impatience. "We both know she's not going to last forever. And when she's gone, everything here, all of this," her voice trailed off, replaced by the clinking of glasses. They were in the kitchen, likely enjoying a late-night drink, celebrating their future inheritance, my future absence. I pressed my ear against the cool wood of the door, my heart pounding against my ribs. "It's just morbid, talking about it like this," Marcus mumbled. "Morbid. It's practical, Marcus. We need to plan. Think about what we can do with this place. We could finally," she lowered her voice, but I strained to hear, "finally get that pool installed and redo the kitchen. Imagine, granite countertops, granite countertops." I gripped the doorknob, the cold metal biting into my palm. This was my home, the home I had poured my life into, brick by brick, memory by memory, and they were discussing it as if it were already theirs, reducing my existence to a waiting game, an obstacle to their granite countertops. "But she's still here, Sophia." Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "It's disrespectful. Disrespectful. She won't even notice. Half the time she doesn't even know what day it is." Sophia's laughter, brittle and cold, echoed down the hall. "Besides," she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "we could encourage the process along a little. Couldn't we? Encourage the process." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My blood ran cold. What did she mean by that? A shiver ran down my spine, a premonition of something dark and sinister. I stumbled back from the door, my legs weak. I needed to sit down, to breathe, to process the venomous words I had just overheard. Sinking onto the edge of my bed, I stared blankly at the faded floral wallpaper, the familiar pattern now mocking me with its cheerful innocence. This was my room, in my house, and they were plotting my demise. The clinking of glasses started again, followed by Sophia's triumphant laugh. "Just imagine, Marcus. This could all be ours. Sooner than you think. Sooner than you think." The words reverberated in my mind, a chilling promise. I closed my eyes, the image of their celebrating faces, toasting my demise over glasses of wine in my kitchen, seared into my memory. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a surge of something else. Something cold, hard, and resolute. This wasn't grief. This wasn't despair. This was anger, pure, unadulterated rage. I opened my eyes, my gaze hardening. They wanted my house. They wanted me gone. They thought I was a senile old woman, oblivious to their scheming. They were wrong, dead wrong. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. And I wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. I stood up, my legs steadier now, the anger fueling my resolve. I walked over to the window and looked out at the moonlit garden, the same garden I had tended for decades. This was my home, my legacy, and I would not let them steal it from me. Not now, not ever. They wanted a fight. They would get one. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my quiet dignity for weakness. They would learn soon enough that I was far stronger than they thought. I had a lifetime of savings, investments they knew nothing about, and a lawyer, a sharp, shrewd woman named Miss Harding, who owed me a favor. I reached for the phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed her number. It was late, but she would answer. She always did. "Miss Harding," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need your help. I think someone is trying to steal my house." A pause, then a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. And I added, a flicker of steel entering my voice, "I believe it's time for a little payback." The first rays of dawn began to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. A new day was dawning, and for Sophia and Marcus, it was going to be a very different day indeed. The weak morning light filtering through the kitchen window did little to warm the chill that had settled deep in my bones. "Mother," Sophia began, her voice dripping with a false sweetness that set my teeth on edge, "we need to talk about your situation." I didn't need to ask what situation she meant. Last night's argument, the cruel words about me being a burden, the blatant expectation that I would simply fade away and leave them my house, it all hung heavy in the air between us. "I believe we've already talked," I replied, keeping my voice level despite the tremor of anger I felt. "Unless you have something new to add." Sophia shifted her weight, the expensive heels she always wore clicking against the linoleum. "Well, Marcus and I have discussed it," she said, her eyes flitting around the room, avoiding mine, "and we've decided it's best if you move to the basement." The words hung in the air, each syllable a tiny icicle piercing my heart. The basement, my own home, and they were relegating me to the damp, unfinished space where I stored old photo albums and holiday decorations. "The basement," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophia nodded, a tight, determined set to her jaw. "Yes, Mother, it's the most practical solution. It has its own bathroom, and we can set up a small kitchenette for you. You'll have your own space." Her words were meant to sound comforting, but they felt like a slap in the face. "My own space," I echoed, the bitterness rising in my throat. "In the basement of the house I own, the house I paid for, the house I raised my children in." Sophia sighed, a dramatic, put-upon sound. "Mother, please don't make this more difficult than it has to be. We're doing this for your own good. It's a big house, and you're not getting any younger." She paused, then added, with a saccharine smile, "We wouldn't want you to fall down the stairs, would we?" The implication was clear. I was a frail old woman, incapable of taking care of myself, a liability in my own home. "I'm perfectly capable of navigating stairs," I retorted, my voice sharper now. "I've been doing it for over 60 years. Sophia simply shrugged, her eyes cold. "Perhaps, but accidents happen." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "We'll move your things down later today. Try to have it organized. It will make things easier for everyone." And with that, she was gone, her clicking heels echoing the hollow sound of my own despair. I stood there, the morning sun now mockingly bright, the kitchen suddenly feeling vast and empty. My home, my sanctuary, was being taken from me piece by piece. They thought they could push me into the shadows, discard me like some unwanted relic. They thought they could wait me out, inherit my home, and move on with their lives. They were wrong. I walked slowly to the window, looking out at the garden I had painstakingly cultivated over the years. The roses were just beginning to bud, promising a vibrant burst of color in the weeks to come. They wouldn't bloom in the basement. They needed sunlight, just like I did. I wouldn't wither away in the darkness. I wouldn't let them dim my light. A flicker of resolve ignited within me, a small flame in the face of their icy disregard. I wouldn't fight them with anger or shouting matches. I wouldn't stoop to their level. I would fight them with something far more powerful. The law. I remembered the thick folder in my desk drawer, the one containing my will, the deed to the house, all the legal documents that proved my ownership. Sophia and Marcus clearly thought they had me cornered, that I was helpless. They underestimated me. They had no idea the power I still held, the strength that lay dormant within me. I went to the phone, my hand trembling slightly as I dialed the number of my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. His voice, calm and reassuring, was a lifeline in the turbulent sea of my emotions. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice regaining its steadiness, "I need your help." He listened patiently as I recounted the events of the past few days, the escalating tension, the final, humiliating blow of being banished to the basement. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice firm. "Betty," he said, "don't worry. We'll take care of this." His words were a balm to my wounded spirit. A seed of hope began to grow, pushing through the layers of hurt and anger. I wouldn't be relegated to the basement. I wouldn't be silenced or ignored. I would fight for what was rightfully mine. I would reclaim my home, my life, my dignity. And Sophia and Marcus, they would learn a valuable lesson about underestimating a mother's love and a mother's resolve. The roses would bloom again, and so would I. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The damp chill of the basement seeped into my bones. "It's for your own good, Mom," Sophia had said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You're getting too old to manage the stairs." But her eyes, those hard, glittering eyes, told a different story. They spoke of possessions, of inheritance, of my house becoming hers. I sat huddled on the lumpy cot they'd provided, a thin, scratchy blanket my only comfort. The single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling cast long, distorted shadows, turning familiar objects into menacing shapes. My own basement, a place where I'd canned peaches and stored holiday decorations, now felt like a prison. "Just think of it as your own little apartment," Julian had chirped, offering a strained smile. "Cozy, right? Cozy, right?" I hugged myself tighter, trying to ward off the cold that seemed to emanate not from the concrete walls, but from the betrayal itself. How could my own son, Marcus, stand by and watch this happen? He'd always been such a gentle boy, so considerate. "Sophia's just worried about you, Mom," he'd mumbled, avoiding my gaze. His words echoed in the silence of the basement, hollow and unconvincing. He knew. He had to know what Sophia was doing, what she was after, and yet he did nothing. That hurt more than the banishment itself, more than the damp cold, more than the pitiful excuse of a bed. My own son had chosen his wife over his mother. He'd traded years of love and devotion for the promise of a house he hadn't earned, a house that was rightfully mine. The air hung heavy with the smell of mildew and something else, something faintly sweet and sickeningly familiar. Sophia's perfume. I could almost feel her presence here, gloating in her victory. I imagined her upstairs, walking through my rooms, running her hands over my furniture, planning how she would redecorate, how she would erase any trace of me from this house. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. It was anger, pure, unadulterated anger. I'd spent my life building a home, raising my son, creating a haven for us both. And now this interloper, this woman who barely knew me, was trying to steal it all away. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths, trying to calm the storm raging within me. I wouldn't let them see me break. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I would not cry. There had to be a way out, a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I thought back to my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. His calm, reassuring voice echoed in my memory. "Don't worry, Mrs. Davis," he'd said. "We'll go over everything. We'll explore all your options." He'd seemed confident, almost amused, like he'd seen this sort of thing before, like he knew how these stories usually ended. I clung to that memory, to the sliver of hope it offered. I opened my eyes, the faintest glimmer of resolve flickering within them. I would not be defeated. I would not be silenced. I would fight. I would fight for my home, for my life, for everything I'd worked so hard to build. The dampness of the basement no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could gather my strength, where I could plot my next move. I stood up, the flimsy blanket falling to the floor. The cold concrete felt solid beneath my feet. I wasn't broken. I was just starting over, and Sophia, Julian, and even Marcusly had no idea what was coming. They thought they'd won. They thought they had me cornered, banished to the shadows. But they were wrong. They were so very wrong. The game, I realized, had just begun, and I, for one, was ready to play. I just needed to make a phone call. The damp chill of the basement clung to me like a shroud. "Just for a few days, Mom," Sophia had said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "until we can get the guest room ready. A few days." It had been a week since I'd been banished to my own basement, a space now filled with dusty boxes and forgotten memories. "Julian's allergic to dust," she'd added, as if that explained everything. I reached for the old rotary phone, its heavy bass cold against my palm. I dialed Rebecca's number, each click a small act of defiance. Rebecca Miller's office. A crisp voice answered. "Hello, it's Betty Davis. Is Rebecca available?" My voice wavered slightly, a betrayal of the fear gnawing at me. "One moment, please." The hold music, a teeny rendition of some classical piece, grated on my nerves. I paced the small space, my slippers shuffling on the concrete floor. Every corner of this basement held a memory, a piece of my life that was slowly being chipped away. This house, built with my late husband, John, was all I had left. "Betty, it's Rebecca. What can I do for you?" Rebecca's voice, warm and familiar, was a lifeline. Rebecca, I think I'm in trouble. I struggled to keep my voice steady. Sophia and Julian, they've moved into the house. Moved in, Rebecca's tone sharpened. How is that possible? The house is in your name. I know, I said, my voice cracking, but they've made it impossible for me to stay upstairs. They say Julian's allergies are acting up. They've put all my things down here. I gestured vaguely at the boxes surrounding me, even though she couldn't see. They said it's just temporary, but I don't know. There was a pause, filled only by the static on the line. Betty, Rebecca said finally, tell me everything. Start from the beginning. And so I did. I told her about the subtle digs, the constant criticisms, the growing feeling of being an outsider in my own home. I told her about overhearing Sophia and Julian discussing my eventual demise and how they couldn't wait to redecorate. I told her about being relegated to the basement, a space they clearly viewed as my waiting room for the grave. This is unacceptable, Betty, Rebecca said, her voice hardening with each word. They have no legal right to treat you this way. But what can I do? I sank onto the edge of a dusty old trunk, the wood groaning under my weight. They're my family. My own son, the words trailed off, choked by a rising tide of despair. Family doesn't give them the right to bully you, Betty, Rebecca said firmly. We need to review your legal documents, your will, the deed to the house, everything. I have them all upstairs, I said, a flicker of hope igniting within me. No, Rebecca said. Don't go near them. I don't want them getting their hands on anything. We need to be smart about this. Smart, I repeated, the word echoing strangely in the quiet basement. Yes, Rebecca said. We'll schedule a meeting at my office tomorrow. Bring any documents you can access discreetly. We'll go over everything and discuss your options. Options, the word felt foreign, almost luxurious. For so long, I had felt powerless, trapped in a situation I didn't understand. Now a glimmer of possibility, a chance to reclaim my life, began to take shape. Yes, options, Rebecca repeated. We'll explore everything, from legal action to other strategies. There was a subtle shift in her tone, a hint of something unspoken. Other strategies, I asked, intrigued. We'll discuss it tomorrow, Betty, Rebecca said. For now, just stay put. Don't antagonize them. We need to gather our information and plan our next move carefully. Okay, Rebecca, I said, a newfound sense of resolve hardening my voice. I'll see you tomorrow. We hung up, and I sat there in the silence, the weight of the past week pressing down on me. But beneath the weight, something else was stirring, a spark of anger, a flicker of defiance. I looked around the basement, at the boxes filled with my life, and a slow smile spread across my face. They thought they had won. They thought they had me cornered, relegated to the shadows. They were wrong. They had underestimated me. I had something they didn't. The law, and a lawyer who seemed to have a few tricks up her sleeve. Tomorrow, I would start taking back what was mine. Tomorrow, the game would change. The damp chill of the basement still clung to me, but now it felt less like a shroud and more like a cloak, concealing the quiet fury burning within. Rebecca's office was quiet, the only sound the gentle hum of the air conditioning. They've basically banished me to the basement, Rebecca, I said, my voice trembling slightly. My own home. I wrung my hands, still feeling the chill of the damp concrete floor against my bare feet. Sophia keeps saying, "This will all be ours soon, Mother," with this sickly sweet smile. Rebecca, my lawyer and a friend for over 20 years, leaned back in her leather chair, her expression unreadable. "Tell me everything, Betty. Start from the beginning." I took a deep breath and launched into my story. I explained how Sophia had been so charming when she and Marcus first started dating. She was always bringing me little gifts, baking cookies, calling me Mom. I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Now she barely acknowledges my existence unless it's to make another snide remark about how long I'm taking to well. You know, I trailed off, unable to say the word die aloud. It felt too surreal, too cruel, that my own daughter-in-law was essentially waiting for me to pass away so she could inherit my house. The house I'd poured my heart and soul into, the house where I'd raised Marcus, the house filled with a lifetime of memories. She's become increasingly hostile ever since Marcus and I had that argument about the will. I continued, my voice cracking. He tried to convince me to leave everything to them, to secure their future, as he put it. I shook my head, still reeling from the betrayal. I told him I wasn't planning on dying anytime soon, and that I intended to enjoy my home and my assets for as long as I possibly could. That's when things had started to change. Little by little, Sophia began chipping away at my comfort, my sense of belonging. First, it was the subtle jabs about my clutter, which quickly escalated to her rearranging my furniture and donating my belongings without my permission. She redecorated my living room in shades of beige and gray. I told Rebecca, my voice thick with emotion, said it was more modern. It looks like a hospital waiting room. Then came the restrictions. Sophia started controlling the thermostat, setting it to temperatures I found unbearably cold. She complained about the strong smells from my cooking, eventually banning me from the kitchen altogether. She claims my spices trigger Julian's allergies. I explained to Rebecca, rolling my eyes. Julian doesn't have any allergies. He ate my vindaloo last Christmas and went back for seconds. The final straw was the basement incident. I came home from a doctor's appointment to find all my belongings packed into boxes and stacked in the damp, unfinished basement. Sophia said the upstairs bedrooms needed a deep clean and that I should stay downstairs for my own safety while they worked. I recalled the humiliation burning fresh in my throat. "It's just temporary, Mother," she'd said, patting my hand condescendingly, "just until the house is ready for you." Rebecca listened intently, her gaze unwavering. When I finished, she remained silent for a moment, tapping a pen against her notepad. "Betty," she finally said, her voice calm and reassuring, "I've reviewed the documents you brought me. The deed to the house is in your name. You have the right to live there, and they have no legal grounds to evict you, even if they are married to your son." A flicker of hope ignited within me. "So what can I do?" I asked, leaning forward eagerly. "Can I make them leave? Can I get my house back?" Rebecca smiled, a small, almost imperceptible curve of her lips. "We have a few options," she said, opening a thick legal textbook. "We can file a restraining order against Sophia and Marcus based on their harassment and creating a hostile living environment for you. that would force them to leave the premises. She paused, flipping through the pages. Or, she continued, her eyes gleaming, we could take a different approach. My heart pounded in my chest. What do you mean? I asked, barely able to contain my excitement. Rebecca closed the textbook with a decisive snap. We could amend your will, she said, her voice low and confidential. Leave the house to someone else entirely. My breath caught in my throat. Someone else, I repeated, my mind racing. But who? Rebecca leaned forward, her eyes twinkling. That, she said, a sly smile spreading across her face, is the best part. We have a lot of options, Betty. A lot of options indeed. And in that moment, sitting in Rebecca's quiet office, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan that would not only get me my house back, but would also deliver a dose of sweet revenge. The thought warmed me from the inside out, chasing away the chill of the basement and replacing it with a simmering ember of anticipation. Sophia wanted my house. She thought she could just wait me out, push me around, and inherit everything I'd worked my entire life for. She was in for a rude awakening. Rebecca's office, a sanctuary of mahogany and legal tomes, felt miles away from the chill of my own basement. So you're saying they can't just put me out on the street? I asked, my voice still trembling slightly. Rebecca, my lawyer, steepled her fingers, her gaze steady and reassuring. Not exactly, Betty, she replied, a small smile playing on her lips. Things are a bit more complicated than that. I wrung my hands, the chill of the basement still clinging to me like a shroud. Complicated how? I questioned, dreading the answer. Sophia's words, "This house will be ours soon enough," echoed in my ears, a cruel premonition of my future. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking softly. Well, for starters, she began, her voice calm and measured, "You're still on the deed." My heart skipped a beat. I asked, a flicker of hope igniting within me. But Marcus said I trailed off, remembering the heated argument, the accusations, the sheer venom in Sophia's eyes. They had been so sure, so confident in their claim to my home. Rebecca nodded. He may have implied otherwise, she said, her tone hardening slightly. But legally, you are still a co-owner of this property. She picked up a thick folder, the label Davis Residence Property Deeds emblazoned across the front. I've reviewed all the documentation, she continued, opening the folder and spreading the documents across her desk. And it's clear, your name is right here, alongside Marcus's. I leaned closer, my eyes scanning the legal jargon, searching for my name, for confirmation of what Rebecca was saying. There it was in black and white, undeniable proof that I still had a claim to my own home. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent I almost swayed. But they said they made it clear they wanted me gone. I stammered, the hurt and confusion resurfacing. Rebecca's expression softened. I understand, Betty, she said gently, but verbal agreements, especially in family matters, rarely hold up in court, especially when it comes to property. She tapped a finger on the deed. This, she stated, her voice firm, is what matters. For a moment, I sat in stunned silence, absorbing the implications of Rebecca's words. It wasn't over. I wasn't defeated. I still had a fighting chance. So what can I do? I asked, my voice gaining strength. What are my options? Rebecca smiled, a glint of steel in her eyes. Several, she replied, her voice laced with a newfound confidence. We can start by asserting your right to reside in the property. They can't legally force you out. She continued, explaining the legal procedures, the potential challenges, the possible outcomes. With each word, my hope grew stronger, replacing the fear and despair that had consumed me for days. We can also explore the possibility of partitioning the property, Rebecca suggested, or, if necessary, we can initiate legal action to ensure your financial security. I listened intently, my mind racing, calculating, strategizing. The basement, the cold, the humiliation, it all seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. I had been wronged, treated with disrespect and disregard, but I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them take what was rightfully mine. I was going to fight back. So I said, my voice steady and resolute, let's begin. Rebecca nodded, her smile broadening. I thought you might say that, she replied, reaching for a fresh legal pad. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the office window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. As Rebecca began outlining our plan of action, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation, a thrill of excitement mixed with righteous anger. They thought they had won. They thought they could push me aside and take everything I had. They were wrong. This fight was far from over, and I was just getting started. The glimmer in Rebecca's eyes mirrored my own. This was more than reclaiming a house. It was reclaiming my dignity, my life, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was going to win. I had to. The click of the lock was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. My key turning in the lock of my front door. Get out of my house, you old bat. Sophia had shrieked, her face contorted with rage just weeks ago. Now, standing on the welcome mat, suitcase at my feet, I felt a surge of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel for far too long: triumph. The lawyer's words echoed in my mind. Full ownership, Mrs. Davis. They have no legal claim whatsoever. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old books filling my senses. It was dusty, neglected, but it was mine. The silence was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall. "Hello, old friend," I murmured, running a hand over its polished wood. It was a gift from my late husband, a symbol of the life we built together, the life Sophia and Julian had tried to steal. Upstairs, I could hear muffled sounds. They were here, good. Let them stew a little longer. I took my time, savoring the moment, placing my suitcase by the foot of the stairs. Then I called out, my voice steady and clear. "Sophia, Julian, are you home?" The sound stopped abruptly. A moment later, Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. Julian peered over her shoulder, his expression a mixture of confusion and was that fear. What are you doing here?" Sophia stammered, clutching the banister as if for support. "I live here, dear," I replied, my voice laced with a touch of irony. "Remember." Sophia's face flushed crimson. But we thought she began, then trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "They thought I was gone for good. They thought they had won. You thought wrong. I stated simply, starting up the stairs. With each step, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The humiliation, the betrayal, the loneliness, it was all fading, replaced by a quiet sense of satisfaction. Julian cleared his throat. "Mother Davis," he began, his voice strained. "Perhaps we can talk about this." "Talk," I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "About what?" "Julian, about how you and Sophia plotted to take my house, about how you banished me to the basement, hoping I'd simply disappear." Sophia gasped. "We didn't," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't insult my intelligence, Sophia," I said, my voice hardening. "I heard everything, every whispered conversation, every cruel joke. You thought I was senile, deaf, a burden. You were wrong on all counts." I reached the top of the stairs and stood directly in front of them, my gaze unwavering. "This is my house," I stated firmly, "and you are no longer welcome here." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "But where are we supposed to go?" she cried, her voice trembling. "We have nowhere else," I shrugged. "That's not my problem," I replied coldly. "You made your bed, now lie in it." I turned to Julian. "I expect you both to be gone by tomorrow morning. Everything you brought into this house goes with you, and don't even think about taking anything that belongs to me." Julian's face hardened. He opened his mouth to argue, but I silenced him with a look. "I have all the legal documentation," I said, my voice low and menacing. "Trying to fight me will only make things worse for you." He swallowed hard, defeated. The fight had gone out of him. He nodded slowly, then turned and led Sophia back into the bedroom. Their shoulders slumped. I watched them go, a flicker of something akin to pity crossing my face, but only a flicker. They had brought this upon themselves. I walked into the master bedroom, my bedroom, and opened the window, letting in the fresh air and the warm afternoon sun. The room was exactly as I had left it, my favorite quilt folded neatly on the bed, my books stacked on the nightstand, a framed photo of my husband smiling down at me from the dresser. It felt good to be home. I unpacked my suitcase, carefully hanging my clothes in the closet and placing my toiletries in the bathroom. As I did so, I noticed a small, dusty box tucked away on a shelf. Curious, I pulled it down and opened it. Inside, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, was a beautiful antique necklace, a string of pearls with a diamond clasp, a gift from my husband on our 10th anniversary. I hadn't seen it in years. I had assumed it was lost, or perhaps even stolen, but here it was, safe and sound. A slow smile spread across my face. This house held more than just memories. It held secrets, treasures, a lifetime of love and laughter. And now it was mine again, completely and undeniably mine. I clasped the necklace around my neck, the cool pearls against my skin a comforting weight. The future stretched before me, uncertain yet full of possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. The house was quiet again, but this time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was the silence of contentment, of victory, the silence of a home truly reclaimed. The smell of stale coffee hung in the air, a ghostly reminder of mornings. Sophia deemed me too senile to handle the coffee maker. "Mother, you'll burn the house down," she'd chirp, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Best leave it to us. Double quotes now. Standing in my own kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window I'd chosen for its garden view 20 years ago, I felt a calm strength settle over me. My lawyer's words echoed in my mind. Full ownership, Betty. They have no claim. It was time. I heard them before I saw them, Sophia's high-pitched laughter and Julian's rumbling response. They strolled in, arms laden with grocery bags, oblivious to my presence. Put the cold stuff away, darling, Sophia instructed Julian, her voice dripping with the false sweetness she usually reserved for me when she wanted something. He brushed a stray curl from her forehead. Anything for you, my love. Their casual intimacy grated on me, a stark contrast to the icy politeness they'd shown me these past few months. They finally noticed me. Sophia's smile faltered. Oh, you're still here. Julian's eyes flickered nervously. Mother, he mumbled, a weak attempt at a greeting. I let the silence hang, letting them squirm under my gaze. The bags rustled as they shifted uncomfortably. I believe, I said, my voice low and steady, we need to have a little chat. Sophia recovered quickly. Actually, Mother, we're rather busy. We have a dinner party planned. This was her house now in her mind, her domain. I could practically see her mentally redecorating, replacing my cherished antique table with some modern monstrosity. I'm afraid, I said, picking up an apple from one of the bags and polishing it on my sleeve. This party will have to be postponed. Sophia's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. And why is that? The apple gleamed in the sunlight. Because, Sophia, I said, taking a crisp bite, this house is mine. The color drained from Sophia's face. What are you talking about? Julian stepped forward, a flicker of anger in his eyes. Now, Mother, let's not be unreasonable. I met his gaze, unflinching. Unreasonable. I think you'll find I'm being perfectly reasonable. I've consulted with my lawyer, and I'm fully within my rights to ask you both to leave. Sophia sputtered. Leave? But we're getting married. We were going to live here. I gestured around the kitchen. This kitchen, Sophia, where you so kindly relieved me of coffee-making duties. This house, where you've confined me to the basement, whispering about my impending demise and your grand inheritance. Her eyes darted to Julian, then back to me. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, speechless for once. I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. You see, Sophia, you made a crucial error. You underestimated me. You assumed I was a doddering old woman, easily manipulated and dismissed. You were wrong. Julian, ever the pragmatist, stepped forward again. Mother, I'm sure we can work something out. We can discuss arrangements. I shook my head. The arrangements, Julian, have already been made by me. You and Sophia have shown me nothing but disrespect and disregard. You saw me as an obstacle to be overcome, a burden to be borne until I conveniently passed away. I placed the half-eaten apple back in the bag, the crunch echoing in the sudden silence. Well, I'm not going anywhere. And now, I said, stepping aside, it's time for you both to go. Sophia finally found her voice, though it was thin and reedy. But our things, they're all here. I smiled, a genuine smile this time. Don't worry, Sophia. You'll have ample opportunity to retrieve them. after you find somewhere else to live." Julian's face was a mask of disbelief. He looked from me to Sophia, then back to me again. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I watched as they gathered their things, their movements stiff and awkward. The joy and confidence they'd exuded just moments before had vanished, replaced by a stunned silence. As they walked out the door, Sophia shot me a venomous glare. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I closed the door behind them, the sound final and satisfying. The stale smell of coffee still lingered, but it no longer mattered. My house was mine again. I walked over to the window, the same window I'd chosen for its garden view all those years ago. The roses were in bloom, their vibrant colors a testament to resilience and renewal. I inhaled deeply, the fresh air filling my lungs. It was time to start living again. The first order of business, a fresh pot of coffee.